Hi everyone, and welcome back to Age Gap a Love Story. I'm Carrie.
I'm Alan.
And as always, we like to introduce ourselves and say that we are a married couple who has a 32 and a
How
half
do you do? I'm Alan.
year age difference.
I'm introducing myself.
And today is episode 24 of our podcast and YouTube channel. And today we're talking about differences in life stages and how to manage those differences when you have a large age difference with your partner.
Is that us?
So this episode came out of a poll that I did in our private Facebook group. I asked you guys what topic you wanted us to cover, and this is the result. And so we really appreciate your input. Otherwise, we just kind of go on what we think you might want, but it's definitely more helpful if you give us some direction. So I actually had to do a little bit of research on life stages. I wasn't even really sure what that meant, but I first heard that term back when I was seeing a therapist. When Alan and we'd been dating a couple of years, and I think Alan had proposed at that point, and I was really nervous about telling my family about Alan and if getting married was the right choice for us. And this therapist, who's really nice, she pointed out that one of the risks, I guess, of an age gap relationship is differences in life stages. And I think she was mostly pointing out that if I was at the beginning of my career, which I was, and Alan was more towards the end, that there could be issues if, for instance, he retired and I was in the middle of my career and really busy and stuff like that. So that's what I took to mean life stages. Is that how you take it? I mean, or do you even think about that?
I didn't really give it a lot of thought because I was busy at the time, you were busy at the time, and I guess I thought that I would be busy for a lot longer, which actually turned out to be the case because I didn't really retire from being active in one way or another business-wise until about a year and a half ago or a year ago. So although there was an interim period when I was retired, I still found things to do, and I didn't find that Carrie and I had any conflicts as far as her level of activity versus mine.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's worked out really well for us. It actually hasn't been a problem, but I would say that we have shaped our lives around making sure that we were like in sync with each other. And we do have some tips that we're going to share, but I did want to just cover this topic of what is a life stage. And so I did a little bit of research in preparation, and it looks like there isn't a really strict black and white definition of like different life stages and what it means and all that, but I found some interesting information. It was really kind of not super, like I said, not super black and white. It was like, in your 20s, you're in an exploration. In your 30s and 40s, you're really productive. In your 50s and 60s, you're contemplative. And then in your 70s, 80s, and beyond, you're you're sharing your wisdom.
May I make a point here?
Sure.
In my experience through life, I have found that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to use the term black and white to describe anything that has to do with people or life in general. I mean, there's some commonality, but wow, people are just so different, and our personalities change with time. And yes.
Yeah. So, but I think it is kind of obvious that somebody in their 20s would be starting his or her career versus somebody's in their 70s or 80s is perhaps ending their career and maybe wanting to spend more time traveling or spending time with grandchildren, maybe enjoying the fruits of their labor. And so I do think it's something to consider. And
it's something you should discuss early in a relationship.
Yeah, I think so. I think, of course, it also brings up the idea of, are you going to want to have children? Children is not a a life stage, but it could be a life event that can be very important for people. So anyways, that's kind of a brief overview of the life stages. And I think for to summarize, it kind of has to do with the different purposes or goals you have in different stages of your life, different ages.
Right, and I do want to emphasize the point I made a moment ago, is that where you are life stage-wise can change. For example, somebody who is younger and really aggressive and active may decide at some point, I don't really want to be this busy. I do want to have more leisure time. I do want to travel or be recreational in some sense. And on the other end, the older person might say, I don't really want to retire. I don't really want to slow down. I want to find something else to keep me busy professionally or on a volunteer basis. So people's attitudes are subject to change. There's no question about it. So it's very difficult to plot a course and say this is where we're going to be in 10, 15, 20 years as far as our likes and dislikes.
Yeah, that's true. And so maybe it's more of a issue that you can possibly consider, but it's also an issue to think about where you are right now. I mean, if you're just maybe dating somebody who's much older than you, then it's just, a question to ask right now, like, what do you want to do with your life type of thing.
Right. I mean, you can explore the person's intent and plans because maybe they won't be changed. So it's good to know whether they are or are not solid. And I think another aspect of this is that I completely lost my.
That's okay. Well, I was going to say that I think maybe one of the reasons why this therapist brought it up is that, it really is kind of like if you were with somebody your own age. Like, I'm thinking about my sister. She married her boyfriend from college, and so they have really progressed through life together. Like, they both figured out their career. They had children together. They're approaching middle age together. They bought their first house together. So they've really just the way kind of the typical American progresses through life. They've done that together. Whereas Alan and I, he already had a business when I met him. He'd already had children. But the cool thing, and we'll talk about this later, but the cool thing is about life these days is I feel like people aren't as restricted anymore. People don't have to retire at 60 or 65 or whatever it used to be. Things are so much different now. So I feel like this whole, thing about, you got to worry about differences in life stages. I feel like it's not as, important. It's still important, but it doesn't have to be make or break the way maybe it used to be. So we can be grateful for that.
Yes.
Did you think of what you forgot?
No.
Okay, that's okay. So we're going to talk about, how do life stages affect age gap relationships? We kind of talked about this. And so you might assume that it's only negative, but I actually think that it could be really positive. And the way that I think it's positively affected us is that because I was at the beginning of my career, I had the input from Alan, who had a whole bunch of life experience, and he's really helped give me great advice along the way and help me maybe avoid pitfalls. For instance, when I finished graduate school, I thought about going back to work in like a corporate environment, and he was kind of like, do you really want to go back to working in an office, a 9 to 5, and having a boss and that kind of thing, where as I was able to really think about what really would be fulfilling for me and started my own business instead. And then I think, I don't know to speak for you, but maybe my enthusiasm for life, maybe that has positively impacted you, and because you ended up going back to work and stuff too at my encouraging. So if we had been at the same life stages, maybe I would have said, oh no, just retire and let's go play with our grandchildren all day long or something. So I don't think it has to be a negative thing, and actually differences in life stages can be a positive thing. when it comes to age gap relationships. And then we want to talk about a few tips we have specifically for managing these differences. And the first one I wanted to point out is to make sure that your overall goals and values are similar. So I think even though opposites can attract and stuff, I think personally for us, for the long-term being of our relationship, the way we've just gotten along so well together and gone through life together is because we have such similar values and goals. Wouldn't you say so?
I would. And I would say that although Carrie is 32 years younger, that as I have aged, my attitude towards life, as I think it's common for most people as they age, is a greater desire for security, for tranquility, for less risk-taking, a more stable, consistent daily routine, and that progressively has become more important in my life. And I think that's always been very important to Carrie because of some issues she had growing up with instability in her life. So we've kind of come together on that point where my reduction in adventure, shall we say, has blended very nicely with Carrie's preferences on activities in life.
Yeah, so I think whereas if you had a difference in those kinds of things, where one person might be like, let's sell everything and move into an RV, which is fine. But if one person wants to do that and the other person is totally against that, that is going to be a big problem. So fortunately,
a big problem.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure that happens all the time. Every once in a while, I get, a wild hair like, let's sell everything and move to Hawaii and start a farm. And then Alan we talked through it and realized that that is not going to increase stability and predictability and safety and those kinds of things. So anyways, I just think that is, so if you do have similar values and goals, and even if you have different, you're one person's working, one person's retired, if you're both working towards the same goal, overall, it's really going to smooth the differences that you do have.
Right. I think not only in an age gap relationship, but for everybody at almost every stage of life, to a degree, it's very important to avoid extremes, either on the demands in your life to the point where you have a great deal of stress and tension, and to the other extreme where you don't have enough activity in your life and you are bored and you really don't have a great interest, not something to provide passion for you to keep you going. So either one of those two extremes at any life stage is not good. And as Carrie pointed out, if you have extremes in either direction that are different in a couple, it's almost impossible to come together in the middle unless you have a really strong relationship.
Yeah, and I would say the only problem with Alan and I being so similar is that sometimes, because we do think, we think we almost like feed off of each other. So if one of us gets a little bit of a crazy idea, then sometimes we go along with it without questioning. So we've gotten ourselves into a little bit of trouble. Nothing that we couldn't get out of, but it is kind of funny.
Well, yeah, in Carrie's trouble, we made decisions that weren't the most prudent, and they weren't in any way terribly damaging, but are they decisions we shouldn't have made? Yes. Have we learned from them? I would say yes.
Yeah.
Will we make mistakes in the future like every living being? Yes. But hopefully there won't be as many, and they'll be of a different type where we haven't had experience in making them in the past.
Yeah.
So the important thing is not to look back on your past and to learn from mistakes you've made.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't change the past.
Okay, so the first tip was to make sure your goals and values are similar. The second tip would be to keep the lines of communication open and kind of keep a constant gauge on your partner. Like, how's your partner feeling mentally, just to kind of check in often, make sure that you're both on the same page. And I wanted to bring up an example without like saying who it is, because I don't want to impeach on their, or what's the word, impede on their privacy. But we had some friends, and it was a lesbian couple, so it's two ladies, and their age gap was not even that extreme. It was maybe 15 years. But the younger one was in the prime of her career, and the older one had recently retired. And I think we don't know exactly what happened, but I think the older one or the younger one was maybe making promises that she was going to retire early. And so the older one retired, from working her whole life. She loved her work, and she maybe had an expectation that they were going to travel and have more time together, because they both worked in
Healthcare.
And were very extremely busy. So then I think the younger one, I don't know what happened, she got a better job offer, so she just was making so much money she really couldn't retire early, or it just the money was too good. And then so I don't know what happened, but pretty much the older one, while the younger one was at work one day, she just left. She packed her bags and left. And they were married. They'd been together like a long time. And the younger one was devastated. It was very sad. And so we don't know all the details, but I do know that, to me, that's a situation where the lines, to me, it just says, like, you really need to keep checking in with your partner. Like, I can tell there's days when Alan is bored. I'm working, he's not working. And I try to check in. If it's one day out of a couple of weeks, he can manage that. If it becomes day after day after day that he's bored, now, of course, we're just coming out of the pandemic, so we haven't been able to do that much, but going forward, it's a signal to me, okay, I need to take a little step back from work, and we need to spend a day doing something. Maybe we need to plan something, and then he needs to keep in touch with me and let me know, okay, like, I really need to get out. Let's go out and do something fun, and that's always a good reminder for me, because I tend to be a workaholic.
Yeah, I'm not very good at hobbies. Work has pretty much been my whole life. I mean, I've tried several things in retirement. I tried yodeling, but then I couldn't remember the words. And then I thought I might be a Somali pirate, but I didn't want to move to Somaliland. And then I was thinking about cage fighting, but I didn't want to get tattoos and shave my head. So anyway.
Okay. So I think just keeping the lines of communication open and being sensitive to your partner as you go through these, you go through life together, then it can help prevent any major issues, hopefully. I would say be willing to compromise and have patience for your partner. So I thought about this yesterday, and I was thinking about how, like, in a relationship, it's not even just patience, like, oh, I'll be patient with you today and you be patient with me tomorrow. It's really like, Alan's being patient with me while I'm working so hard, and this has lasted years. It can be months before I can take a break and take a vacation. So the patience is not just on a daily basis. It can really last for years. Wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Okay. And then I would say the last point is to keep an attitude of learning and openness to change and growth, no matter what your age. And this is something that I always try to remind Alan of. And I think, I don't know, either this is something from my personality or maybe it's from my youth, and I hope to keep it as I grow older, but I am always wanting to learn. And I always have this attitude of, not always, but I try to have an attitude of curiosity about the world, because I feel like when you close yourself off to learning and changing and growing, then to me that's a sign of aging and not a positive sign. So this is something now, like, because Alan is an older generation, I think sometimes he needs encouragement to learn. Like, we do things together. We watch programs about travel or different cultures together. I like to learn musical instruments. Alan doesn't. I try to encourage him. Like, I try to help him figure out what his interests are. But I mean, you do have your own interests, and a lot of Alan's interests are completely different from mine, like finance and I don't know, maybe more like really like war history, that kind of thing. But the cool thing, as I mentioned, is because of the age that we live in, the learning opportunities are everywhere and in all forms, on TV, on iPads, podcasts. So it's really easy to find learning opportunities.
I think another way to soften the differences in the stages of your life is that although we're together pretty much 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that when Carrie is working, she has an office in our home that she goes to, and I'm in another part of the house doing what I want to do, and I do have time when I can watch TV with headphones so I don't disturb her, and I have about an hour and a half or an hour or so of my own TV time where I can watch my boy shows, and then in the evening we have things we enjoy and watch together. So, and then Carrie has her separate time and she can do research, whatever it is, whether it's in her office or somewhere else in the house. So again, we do have a degree of independence, even though we are together all the time. And I think that's a good way to kind of soften the different stages in life so they still blend.
Yeah, and I think it helps, of course. I mean, it's helped a lot that I do work from home. If I had taken another corporate job and I was away from home for 10 hours a day and came back, exhausted and that kind of thing, that would have been a lot more challenging, especially now that Alan is retired. So I, like when I was talking about having patience, I think like I've been in compromising. So like I made compromises on my career earlier on in our relationship, so like 15 years ago. And so now I feel like Alan is giving me back a little bit of that compromise in terms of just kind of, he's having to figure out how to fill his own time. So that's what I meant kind of about like that patience and compromise can last over decades, that you have to offer that to each other. Anyways, that's what I was thinking about yesterday. So I hope that this is helpful. I know, of course, not everybody can, of course, not like structure your life where you are home together all the time and that kind of thing. But I thought sharing how we do it might be helpful, and it has really worked out well for us. And so I hope that the tips are helpful, and I will be writing these up into a blog post, and then we can talk about it in our Facebook group or wherever you want to connect with us. And that's it. I don't really have anything else to say except that I don't think that these differences in life stages necessarily have to be a negative thing. As we talked about, it can be a really positive thing, as it has been for me, learning from Alan over the years.
Yes, and I would say, as we do at the end of every podcast, is that we welcome your input. We welcome your questions. We very much would like to hear from you about your circumstances and issues that have been important to you, whether they're behind you or current issues that you're dealing with. Please do let us know. And of course, you have complete anonymity. We never use names or describe in detail any personal circumstances, but they could be good learning points for those who do listen to our podcast.
Yeah, and I think just going back to that couple that we mentioned, that was heartbreaking. It was so sad to see our friend really suffer when her wife left her. Again, it was like overnight. It was shocking for everyone involved, especially her. And and I have another couple who has gotten divorced, and I think it could have been related to these kind of work issues. And I just think that when two people love each other and they can't work these out and end up getting divorced, it's really sad. And we hope that any input that we can provide from our experience could maybe help, keep the love going, because love is so important in this world. It's, it really is what makes life beautiful.
Yes, as the Beatles said in one of their songs, love, love, love.
Okay. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.